Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have back with us Pasquale Sacchetta, who's the president of CFIG Wealth Management, and we'll be talking about interest rate and inflation risk. Pasquale, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Hey, doing good. I know this is kind of a deep topic. It seems like we should take about 3 or 4 hours to talk about this particular one, interest rate and inflation. We hear a lot about inflation in the news, and the frustrating thing is, as consumers, we pretty much can't do anything about it. We just are impacted by it. So let's define what is the inflation and how it impacts interest rates.
All right. Basically, the way interest rates work is the higher the rate, obviously, there's a reason for whatever is pushing up the rate. So normally there's a tie-in to inflation. So the higher the rates go, it's to compensate you for taking a risk in whatever it is that you're doing. So you have to keep in mind that the more inflation you have, the more you have to offset that with a higher rate. And that basically affects, a lot of things from the economy standpoint, which affects a lot of investment decisions.
What are the type of investments that are impacted by interest rates? The first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm certainly not the expert like you are, but I think of like CDs. If interest rates are up or inflation is up or down, then maybe the CD rates are going to change. But what are the other things that inflation will impact?
Well, inflation really impacts many different things, but one key thing to keep in mind is that inflation, most people think higher prices, is what inflation is all about. But inflation really affects your currency. So when prices go up, it's not so much that the price of an item is going up as much as it is that the value of the dollar is going down. So what you can purchase with $1 is going down. It's not. As time goes by and inflation persists, what'll happen is that your dollar buys less, and that's
so like your purchasing power.
Yes. So inflation is really a matter of affecting the value of your currency, of your dollar, more so than it is the cost of something, because the price of something may go up, but if the value of your dollar went up, it would offset inflation.
Yeah.
So it's really, the core of it is what your currency is worth that could buy whatever it is that you're looking to buy. So the reason that interest rates are tied into inflation is because if inflation, for example, is at 5%, and you have a CD earning 5%, you're not making any money. All you're doing is keeping up with inflation.
Yeah.
And why is that important? Because, you put dollars into CDs, and that's where the purchasing power comes in handy.
Kind of reminds me of back in high school. You, at least for me, you kept this like book in your senior year, and it says, "What was the cost of gas now?" and movies or jeans or whatever. And I came across it a few years ago, and it was like, wow, it is just shocking where prices have gone. And to your point there, if our purchasing power is negatively impacted by inflation, now the calculation that you made a few years ago to say you need X number of dollars in retirement, maybe that calculation now is off.
Absolutely.
So then if once you discover that, okay, this calculation is off, not from anybody's mistake, but because inflation has now crept in over the years, what do you do about that? Because all of a sudden now just buying food and clothes and gas and normal things is costing way more money. And now the length of time your retirement savings is going to last now has changed. What are some of the things you're advising your clients to do if that starts happening?
Well, the number one thing to do is to adjust your portfolio so that your return is higher than the interest rate and inflation risk.
Mhm.
And that's something that you need to do. Uh, well, with our clients, we do that on an ongoing basis. So when we had when we had higher inflation just recently, we knew that was a short-term situation, that it wouldn't persist, although some level of inflation has persist. But you have to be on guard for that, because you don't want to have a conservative return on the portfolio only to find out it buys less because you can't get it the currency value that you could previous.
And also some of the things to keep in mind is rebalancing the portfolio, but keeping in mind risk and volatility, because you don't want to say inflation has crept in. We now need to close this gap that we've discovered. So we're going to start increasing your risk and volatility so we get higher rate of return, because now that can go backwards on you. So keeping those things in mind as you're preparing that for a client would be huge. What are some other strategies that clients can consider to safeguard against all of this eroding effect of inflation?
I think what's important is to focus on the long term aspects, and in that regard, if inflation turns out to be a short term risk, then it kind of like modifies itself. It's having the uh, portfolio be such that you can make adjustments over time is the best way to control the inflation risk and to sort of bring it into where it should be.
Does inflation and rising rates have impacts on some of these fixed situations, like even Social Security? Is there an impact that way?
Yes, for example, when seniors get Social Security, they count on a certain amount of fixed income, and the only way to adjust for that is to adjust their payouts for inflation. So, every year there's an announcement of the Social Security, what will go up, and an adjustment is made because they need. And why is that adjustment made? Is because seniors need more money to buy the same things they were buying the prior year.
100%. So now it makes me think of this too. When you think about like annual a review of your portfolio, and what if you're in an environment of inflation, and you start thinking about, well, we should put some money in this type of account, maybe an annuity or a CD or whatever the case is. Do you want to keep your finger on the pulse of the time frame you lock up the money, in the sense that what if inflation starts to kind of move in our positive direction in the year or two? You don't want your money locked up in something where you can't take advantage of now new opportunities, right?
Yes, and that's something that we're cognizant of on a regular basis. Uh, for example, the duration of a bond portfolio is very important. If you go out 30 years, you're taking the highest interest rate risk and inflation risk there is. So if you go short term and your duration, let's say, is 5 years or less, then you're not taking as much risk on the actual valuations, the changes in the value of the bonds. So, you have to know, is making a commitment of a longer period of time, is that consistent with what my goals are, or the client's goals? And if so, is it worth taking that extra risk? And so, generally speaking, unless you're in, a 15 or 16% interest rate environment, it's better to stay short term and have a shorter duration and limit your risk.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So can you think of an example where you've worked with a client before and they were facing some of these inflationary situations, and then it caused a gap in what their money was able to do for them, and then you put together a plan to help mitigate that?
Yes, it's, we have client situations like this all the time. And what happens is that, by having a plan in place that monitors it on an ongoing basis is the best way to make sure that it doesn't sneak up on you.
Yeah.
But it is, there are situations where clients don't see the big picture because they may have only been informed about one specific product or a service, or, and it's hard for them to kind of put the total picture together, but we do that for them. So we're able to make sure that everything is moving along in sync, right from the start, right when we start working with clients. And any changes along the way are, just part of the ongoing maintenance of their long-term plan.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is just to keep in mind, you don't want to make big moves that are reactionary. You don't want to see one thing and go, we need to make this jump. You need to take it, from a calm approach and have those plans in place. And then when you review quarterly or annually, now you're making small adjustments. You're not reacting. And I think that's where it gets people in trouble sometimes, I would suspect.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think that this is such a huge opportunity for people to take a look at their retirement plan and factor in this inflation risk, because when inflation and we might wake up tomorrow and inflation is through the roof, or wake up the next day and now it's under control. You never know. But that purchasing power, I feel like, is one of these things that are underneath the surface that you don't calculate in. You put your pencil to paper and go, I need this much money to provide this much income in retirement. But then when you have that inflation risk, that starts quickly eroding away. So these have been such great topics to talk about, Pasquale. And if someone is interested in learning a little bit more and getting more well-versed in how inflation could impact their portfolio and what they can do to mitigate that, what's the best way they can learn more and then also reach out and connect with you?
Well, our website address is www.cfig-wealth.com. And our number is 203-221-0200. We welcome any calls and requests for information.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you, Mike. You too. Thank you for your time.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.